Welcome to the next video briefing in this series about ATC at Copenhagen Airport. In Copenhagen Airport, we are using the Collaborative Decision Making tool to regulate traffic flow, which is also known in the short form as CDM. As VATSIM gets ever larger and busier, the need to create restrictions and flow management are becoming increasingly important, which is why we are adopting this system, also very widely used in the real world. CDM, while difficult to use in a simulation environment, still brings advantages to busy controlling situations. These are uses like being able to manage outbound traffic out of our own Copenhagen Airport by assigning startup times, avoiding traffic jams and bottlenecks at the runway. We can give pilots the opportunity to depart without delay by using the file departure time as a benchmark for this flow management, and we can restrict airplanes to event airports already from being on the ground, which makes inbound management for that airport much easier. Just likewise, we're anticipating that other airports are going to be doing the same for us. Lastly, you can customize booking times for the booking required events. Now, CDM is a purely proactive effort given for departures to try to manage traffic, and this is why you are always encouraged to use it, of course by using good judgment whether it's really needed at high traffic load periods on VATSIM. Usually you should consider using it after 6 PM on weekdays and potentially all day on weekends, all depending on what events are going on around you, how busy it is. In this time, also do keep an eye on the EKCH channel on Discord, where there is a thread on the VATSIM Scandinavia Discord, to see if there are specific flow restrictions that you need to be aware of when you sit in Copenhagen. Alright, that's that. Now we need to look at how this system actually works. In a nutshell, it works by different timings and restrictions in a way to boil it all down to a time when the pilot can begin his flight. This is what we are calling the startup time, or in the aviation language, which you're going to hear in this presentation, the target startup time, also shortened to TSAT. Different scenarios have different calculations, but the important result is this TSAT time. So, how does this time get to be? Well, it's a bit technical, but you do need to know this background information. The TSAT is deducted from two other times depending if the restriction is internal or external. These are the target takeoff time, known as the TTOT, and the calculated takeoff time, which is known as the CTOT. Target takeoff time being the governing factor if it's an internal restriction to optimize movement in Copenhagen, and a CTOT if the restriction is external, for example cross the pond real-time events or other events where people have pre-booked and need to be airborne at a very specific time. The internal restriction, however, is the most common one used. How it works is pretty simple. In Copenhagen, we anticipate just roughly around 40 departures an hour, meaning a departure every minute and a half. This means every hour we have 40 slots where an airplane can be scheduled in for takeoff. Now, this is Scandinavian 33 Kilo. He's online and the system needs to find a slot for him. He is the only one on the apron, so this should be pretty simple. He has, via his flight plan of course, filed a departure time, which is where we start. This is an EOBT, also known as the estimated off-block time. From this time there's an integration to what we call the TOBT, or target off-block time. Now, this is used in real life to compensate for delays that may happen during the boarding by the gate agent, but this is not a thing on VATSIM. Therefore, EOBT is always identical to TOBT. So this is what the pilot is filing. So now our CDM system knows when the pilot wants to start a flight. Let's say it starts at 12 Zulu. Now the system calculates the push and taxi time from the specific area in the airport where he is. Let's say it's 16 minutes. That would mean that he would be scheduled to depart at 12:16. So the system sets the target takeoff time, the TTOT, to 12:16. Right there on the virtual slot sheet he is. And then calculates 16 minutes back, that's the taxi time, and therefore assigns the all-important target start-off time, the TSAT, at 1200, matching his EOBT with 0 delay, and he's off. Super! And easy, and maybe not particularly useful, to be honest. This is because the flow management with one airplane on the apron is not really useful in general. However, let's change the situation. Now there's not one, but 41. Which most already have their target takeoff time. Now let's see Scandinavian 33 Kilo again. His EOBT TOBT is still at 1200 as he has filed. The system calculates the taxi time of 16 minutes, which puts him ready for takeoff at 12:16. But when trying to assign this slot, we can see here that the slot has already been occupied. It's already been assigned to ICF 209. This is where it gets interesting. Now the system needs to find the next available slot takeoff time for him. So as we go down the list, we see the next available slot for takeoff is at 12:27. So the system puts him there for a new TTOT of 12:27. Calculates the 16 minutes back, which is still the taxi time, which give him a new TSAT now at 12:11, meaning now instead we have a total delay of 11 minutes to flow manage. This is basically what goes on behind the scenes. But sometimes external restriction plays in as well. That's the CTOT. When this is in effect, the system goes and actually reserves a takeoff time slot for Scandinavian 33 kilo. Now his EOBT, TOBT, TTOT, all this doesn't matter anymore because he already has his takeoff time reserved and assigned. Now let's say that his CTOT is at 12:33. It's locked in the system, so it locks it in, it calculates 16 minutes back, and now a TSAT of 12:17 is assigned. There's no relations between the TSAT and the estimated off block time. So basically that's how the two restrictions are calculated, and while the internal one are the most commonly used, the internal development of VATSIM flow management and the CDM plugin may change the things in the future, making CTOTs more common. Time will tell. Now the second part. How do we practically use it? Well, at first you need to activate it. Do this by writing .cdm master EKCH if you are the one issuing the TSAT. Alternatively, you can write .cdm slave EKCH if you are not managing them but just want to stay in the loop. Normally, if delivery is online with sequencing, it will be the sequencing which is the master, managing the TSATs, and delivery which is the slave, just keeping up to date. If delivery is online, however, without a sequencing, as is most common, just sitting by itself, then delivery will be the master. Remember, the aprons has nothing to do with the TSAT, and they should not. Whenever an airplane is transferred from delivery to apron, they must be considered released for flow management purposes. Oh, and another important thing, how you deal with controller changes. It's simple, but it's important, so listen up. The master controller, for example the sequencing, has to do with a controller change. He now types the command to become the slave. Now no one is master and all the times are static. However, the new controller, then once he's logged on, writes the master command to become the new master, and the relieved controller logs off. There should never be two masters at the same time. Alright, now back to the scope. You have two options, the main one being the startup list, which pops up when you log on with the ground profile. If not, you can find it here in the quick settings. Another option, if you don't like this list, you can actually also go ahead and manually enable them in your departure list to combine it. It's up to you, however our recommendation is just stick with the startup list. That's why it's configured like this, and it's easy so you can close it when you don't want to flow manage. So that's why we are going to focus on the startup list. Some of the information in this list you know already now from the departure list. The three columns that are dealing specifically with CDM is the TSAT column, the evaluation column, and the ready column. You see that you're now shown all these calculations taking place in the background, but you don't really see them. You just see the essence of what it boils down to, the TSAT, to make it simple. So for this case, we will again look at Scandinavian 33 kilo. At the current situation, he has a orange TSAT. This is normally because the TSAT has three different color codes that we use to decipher the state of the TSAT. Orange means the TSAT has not yet reached the startup window, which by the way is plus minus 5 minutes. This means the pilot cannot yet be approved for startup. Scandinavian 33 kilo has to wait until he is within his TSAT startup window. Once he gets within plus minus 5 minutes of the TSAT window, or the TSAT, which is the TSAT window, his time will now turn green. This means you can approve a startup and you can get him moving. However, if Scandinavian 33 kilo is not reporting ready within this 5-minute window, now suddenly it turns red and he has lost his startup time. A new one now will have to be requested, and this will put him in the back of the queue, which can result in quite a lengthy delay. Now of course there are a few tweaks you can make to manage the different situations. The action you can do with this TSAT is that you can right click on the TSAT to update the TSAT to the closest possible time. And there are actually a couple of situations where you want to do this. One is now Scandinavian 33 kilo, he calls ready for startup before his TSAT window has come. This is also known as the pilot sending a ready message. The TSAT will be orange, but now if you go ahead and right click, the system is now going to search for the earliest possible available TSAT that will be available for the pilot, or which may have become available for different reasons. When this is being done, two different things can happen. As the system acknowledges the ready message, the requested startup marker on the left side turns green, indicating that he has reported ready. The next thing that happens is that the change to the TSAT, if any, will happen. If the system can find an earlier time, it will try to do so, and if the time happens to be within the 5-minute window, it will also turn the TSAT green, and he can go. If the requested startup turns green, but there's no change to the TSAT, or it's still orange, it means that the system has acknowledged that he's ready, but has not been able to find an earlier time. Another situation is if Scandinavian 33 Kilo was late and the TSAT turned red, meaning that it's expired. The right click will now assign the next available time so that the pilot who is missing his TSAT can get back in the queue as fast as possible, so he won't have to wait too long. Be proactive in getting expired TSATs reassigned so they don't have to wait too long. Alright, let's move ahead to the next column. The next column, the middle one, is called the evaluation column. This is basically an indication of the reliability of the pilot's filed off-block time, as VATSIM pilots are not particularly good at filing correct times. It has 3 letters corresponding to 3 different situations in relation to this. C basically means correct, the file time by the pilot is reasonable, it's within 35 minutes, and the system will calculate a TSAT. P can basically been seen as postponed. The file time is reasonable, it's good, however it's more than 35 minutes in the future, hence the system has not yet calculated the time for him. Once the OBT gets within the 35 minutes of the current time, the system will start calculating a TSAT when the P becomes a C. The I is invalid. Either the time is completely off, like for example it's filed many hours into the future, it's filed in the past, or, which also happens a lot on VATSIM, it's filed as 0000 because the pilot has forgotten to put anything into the off-blocked time of the flight plan. If you see the I, there is reason to investigate and tell the pilot to file a proper time, or right-click the TSAT marker to assign the first available time when the pilot calls for clearance, and then make him accept any delay he gets. Use your common sense to solve these different issues. The last column is the requested startup column, which you already know turned green when the pilot sends a ready message and you have requested an earlier TSAT by right-clicking on it. Note that you can also manually press it to make it green, but notice that this will not have any effect on the TSAT, and it's not a way to send a ready message. What it instead does is that in the event the TSAT is about to expire and turn red, the requested startup marker is manually lighted green. The TSAT stays with the pilot even though it's expired. If you have not marked this and the TSAT expires, all aircraft below are automatically recalculated for the takeoff time slot, and there's not really any way to get it back from the pilot. So again, use this feature as you see fit based on your sound judgment and depending on the situation with the pilot. Hopefully this briefing has increased your awareness of the CDM. To build on top of this, make sure you read all the documentation, there are plenty of it, which are found in the general and supplementary section of the LOP, as well as staying up to date on the changes and readmes of this plugin. Use it when appropriate, use it wisely, educate the pilot community so they file the correct off-block times, and observe the ending of chaos on the airport. Thanks for watching.